Everyone get out!
Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome to another tank review, and this time I'm looking at what I think is my first tank destroyer, and I've chosen for some reason the Churchill Gun Carrier. Does it deserve its reputation? Well, yes, basically. So there you go, review over, you can go away and do something else now. Although, if you're willing to stick around, I will expound on that a little bit and explain quite why the combination of statistics and factors that it has make it a pretty poor tank destroyer, just a pretty poor vehicle. There aren't that many tanks and just tank destroyers, whatever, in the game that I would say were genuinely bad in their current state. This is one of them. And I don't know what it is about tier 6 tank destroyers, because you've also got the ARL V39, which is another pretty hard one to play. And the Jagdpanzer 4 also has a bit of a reputation. That one I haven't played myself, so I can't comment on that personally. But the ARL I have played, and that is also somewhat deserving of its reputation. But hey, at least that thing had some ability. This thing is basically an ARL V39 with the only good thing it had going for it, i.e. the mobility, taken away. So let's bear that in mind. So this thing can't be all bad, right? There must be something good about it. Well, like the ARL, it actually has a pretty good top gun. For tier 6, it gets a 94mm gun, and it's got some pretty decent stats. It's also got one or two not so good stats, but we'll get to that. Like I said, it's 94mm, so it's slightly beefier than the 90mm of the French. The penetration is pretty identical to the French long 90. Damage is slightly better. The accuracy, I think, is as good. Aim time, we will come to the aim time. And as you can see, it's a pretty heavy gun, so we'll bear that in mind when I do my recommended upgrade path, should for some reason you actually want to buy this thing. The top gun is good, and it has great gun depression. I mean, the gun depression on this thing is fantastic. We're talking American heavy levels of gun depression here. The other good thing about it, well, I don't know if you want to call it good, but the other thing about it is that it provides a cross-link from the British heavy line to the British tank destroyer line. So if you, for instance, started playing the heavies and wanted to try out the tank destroyers, you could just skip right over there. It's a bit of a grind, of course, but if you were willing to do it, you can go from the Churchill one and basically get in at tier 7 on the main branch. Now, I'll be honest, I am completely biased because I basically bought this thing to try it out, see what it was like, see if it was as bad as everyone says, and I will upfront say it is precisely the kind of tank destroyer I don't like. It's a sit back and snipe tank destroyer, which requires quite a passive play style, and that was one of the things I didn't like about the ARL V39 as well. But it's not just that, there is a whole combination of things that just make this a genuinely frustrating tank to play. Basically put, it is slow because it's basically a Churchill hull with a housing on top. It's slow and it's very, very poorly armoured. And there's a couple of other things that just make it worse. Not only is it slow and poorly armoured, it doesn't have a particularly good view range, so basically you need other people to spot for you. And the gun traverse is absolutely terrible. It is, I think, worse than the ARL V39. So you're constantly having to turn the hull. And this is where, on the top gun, that 2.9 aim time really becomes a liability, because you're constantly turning the hull, you're constantly waiting for the reticle to settle, and it's horrible. It really is. You need things to be exactly driving towards you in a straight line, because otherwise the amount of time you waste just waiting for the reticle to settle. I mean, you can try shots before it's fully zoomed in, but they're just going to fly off into space. You know, it's 0.34 accuracy, which is okay. It's pretty decent for a tier 6 tank destroyer. But at the ranges you're fighting at, it is actually not quite enough. And it's not a small you know, it's not a small target either. Let's uncheck that box. Let's compare it to the SU-100, which gets a better gun. You know, it's not that much bigger, but it is bigger, and it's got that big flat front. So 88mm would be fairly weak to begin with. You know, tank destroyers are not necessarily known for their armour, unlike, of course, the other British tank destroyer line. But you've basically got the speed of the main tank destroyer line with none of the armour. The whole thing is just a massive weak spot. So, like the ARL, the moment you get spotted, if there's more than one enemy shooting at you, you're just dead. The ARL at least has some ability, but this thing, I mean, it doesn't even have the hit points of its tier 6 cousin. The let's see, that's the wrong thing. The 88 has got 800 hit points. Now it's slow and it's got armor, and okay, it's slow, so it has hit points. This thing's got 650, and it is actually still third best in terms of tier 6 tank destroyers. The SU-100Y gets 700, but that's a premium. So there is a big jump from this thing to the 88, but given that it's as slow as the 88 and it's as big as the 88, then I don't see why it doesn't get the same amount of hit points. So that's another complete liability. The moment you get spotted, you've had it. There is only one way to play this tank, and on some maps, you know, you get this on Himmelsdorf, for instance, and you might as well just quit back to garage, because all you can do is drive towards the enemy, hope to, you know, fire maybe 2 shells, and then you're going to die. Some maps, this is just an absolute terrible, terrible tank on. And I think that's why it's such a bad tank, is in its current, you know, how it is at the moment, it's so limited in what you can do with it. There's so few maps where you can be halfway effective. You know, you're talking open maps, you're talking things like Steppes or Kampinovka, and you have to sit there and just sit there and sit there, and it's so boring to play. You can't do anything else with it because you just die, and in its current state, it is just a drag on any team it's in. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. I don't think there's much good to say about it at the moment. It's just this combination of factors. And normally, if they're going to make something slow and poorly armoured, they give it something really amazing to actually make up for that. But this doesn't have that one killer stat. You know, the gun is pretty decent for a tier 6 tank destroyer. But there are other more mobile tier 6 tank destroyers. SU-100s, I'm looking at you. You know, yes, it's got less pen, but the Top Gun's got 390 alpha, and it's really mobile. The Flat Panzer, okay, the gun selection is pretty terrible, but again, it's got mobility and it's got a very low profile. The British the other tier 6 it's got loads of armor. It's got a very, very good rate of fire. It's actually got, I think the accuracy is maybe not quite as good on the Top Gun, but wow, I cannot click. It gets 17 pounder, which is very nice. 170 pen. You know, at tier 6, you need that. You know, I would almost say, I would actually, if this had this middle gun, the 3.7 inch, actually had better penetration. It's a 94mm gun as well. Yes, it's got better rate of fire, and the pen is okay, but if it had a better pen, I would almost say don't use the Top Gun, use this thing, because the rate of fire is better, and the accuracy would need to be as good, but the aiming time is also less horrible. So yeah, but I mean, I tried it with this gun, and if this gun's stats were slightly better, I would say use this one, don't use the top one. But as it is, yeah, it's lacking in so many ways. It just is. So I've actually got a pair of replays to show you. I think this might be quite a long review as they go, but it's both a win and a victory, and it will show you the frustrations of playing this in both you know, situations. So I'll do an intermission, and you know, I'm not even going to bother with the armor scheme on this. It's terrible. It has no armor, but I will do a suggested upgrade path for those who are silly enough to want to play this thing in its current state. So after the intermission, we'll come back and we'll have some replays. So here we are, this is the first battle, and I will just unpause it. Now, this is Fjords, and I'm going to tell you right away, this match is going to be a loss. But it's also the match where I actually managed to do, I think, the most damage of any game I had in the Churchill Gun Carrier. Now, this is an older replay, so the sniper view is completely bugged out, so it's all going to have to be free camera view. But, like I was saying, this thing's got pretty good gun depression. But see how much of the tank is sticking out still, even when you're using that gun depression. Yeah, that BDR was, he's a sniper, you know. So I figured I would get myself here because there's probably going to be stuff coming around that corner, and trying to drive anywhere else, I am just too damn slow. I'm also going to be right in somebody's face if I'm anywhere else, and basically that's not where I want to be. Even though I'm top tier, everything is a threat, you know, KV-1s, Churchills, just anything tier 5. You know, even medium tanks, just anything that can get around me. This thing is so sluggish. So I'm actually going to fast forward this because it's just incredibly boring. It's just me sitting here sniping, and yeah, this team I was on, this is another one of the frustrations. Your team basically needs to be good enough to carry you. They need to be good enough to spot for you and to basically make up for your deficiencies, because like I said, I consider this thing a drag on any team it's on. So I'm just looking for stuff to snipe at the moment, because I can't drive anywhere to do any good. You know, I know we've lost at this point. They've basically routed our remaining tanks. They were all split up and just got overrun. So it's basically me and a BDR, and there's a pair of heavies left on the other side of the map. But right, there we go. I've actually killed something. Right, this KV2. Right, put it back at normal speed now. This is 0.34 accuracy, and I was aiming at his turret, I believe. 0.34 on this gun with this tank, it does not feel like enough. And at least he was sitting still. I was not having to constantly turn the tank. But there we go. He started moving, and I got to move. And yep, got to move again. And now watch this. The view range on this is 340 meters, and I've actually got binoculars. So there we go. He hits my track. And okay, he's a one shot. I can have him. Right, my binoculars are now active. I should be able to see him. Can I? No. This is a KV2. So I can only... I don't know. KV2, well-known stealth tank, clearly. But, you know, 340 meters, even with binoculars, I could not see a KV2 that was in the open. That was frankly ridiculous. So I've actually managed to kill 3 targets, but this is all way too little too late. You know, I cannot salvage this match. I just know I can't. Even though I've got most of my hit points still, it's just not possible. Well, in any tier 6 tank destroyer in this situation, it probably would be a very, very tall order. But if you had something with a bit more mobility, like a Hellcat, maybe. And I know the Hellcat's got terrible armor, but this thing's got terrible armor. Also, screw this tank so hard. I don't think I ever played this in a single battle where I just didn't get completely and utterly frustrated with it. So I'm going to go for a snapshot because I know he's fired. And he's just diving behind that building. Oh, nope. Well, he's still reloading. Or at least I think he is. He's got the he's actually got the long gun. So there we go. Lower front plate. Where did it go? The tracks. The dispersion on the move on this thing, coupled with everything else, it's just bad. So now we're just waiting for the end. So we'll speed it up again. And yeah, I've done over 2k damage, and this is one of the very rare occasions that I actually managed it. And it was only because the rest of the team died, and I actually ended up with stuff to shoot at. But every time I've been spotted, I've taken damage, and I don't have the rate of fire to combat. You know, that Churchill 1 took most of my remaining health, and this VK is just, you know, I'm dead. And I found this with pretty much most battles. My survival rate in this thing was appalling. It's terrible. The only thing it's got are its hit points, and it doesn't have enough of those. So there you go. That's the most damage I ever did on a Churchill Gun Carrier, and of course it was a terrible loss because the rest of the team was not good enough to carry me, basically, because you need to be carried in this thing. There's no two ways about it. So let's go on to replay number 2. And here we are, and it's actually a much better map this time round. This is that map, Prokhorovka? I think it's Prokhorovka. This in theory ought to be a much better map because I can basically go to the usual place you go in a tank destroyer and snipe down the 1-2 line. This is incredibly dependent on the rest of the team spotting. Now, it's actually, we're what, a minute 10 seconds. It's taken me a minute just to drive over here from the spawn point because I started in spawn point 1 on this map. So yeah, this thing has got all the speed of a Churchill. Actually, I think the Churchill 1 is probably faster than this thing. So it is a struggle to get in position before the rest of your team is doing stuff. And, you know, this is random battles, so this is completely uncoordinated. It's just people doing their own thing, and it's hard to say to people, you know, don't. You can try saying don't go down there before I'm in position. Most of the time they'll just ignore you. You know, they might not even speak your language. Even if they do, they might just ignore you. So there we go. Our IS is down already. That's one of our top tiers gone. And this is before I've even been in range to actually spot anything and fire at anything rather. So it's basically a bunch of tank destroyers. There is a, where is he? A lone KV-1 and a medium. So I'm just going to back up because possibly I was spotted, possibly that was a stray shot. And who do I have a shot on? Now the gun depression came in quite useful here, you can see. It meant I could take a shot and then back down. But this is fairly gentle sloping terrain, you know, if you get on terrain where there's less of a slope. See, there's one that was aimed, not quite fully, but just flew off into space. You need to let the reticle settle 100%. Although the reticle is a bit wonky because again this is free camera view because sniper view is completely bugged, and I think that's just going to be the case for all older replays. So we know those guys in front of me are spotted, and I'm actually managing to do some damage here, but it's like I was saying before, you need the rest of the team to be good enough, and you need them to be pulling their weight and some of your weight as well. Because there we go, I actually killed something. Will the wonders never cease? The gun will just troll you sometimes. I actually think, you know, it gets a little bit more alpha than the 90mm guns. A little bit more alpha on this top gun I think actually would be quite nice if it was 260. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Or even slightly higher than that. I think, yeah, because at the moment it's basically a 90mm French gun. There's really not that much to choose in between them. I didn't actually check to see if the ARL gets a better rate of fire actually. Probably not. The British tank destroyers generally get quite a good rate of fire, and this one isn't that much of an exception. But I think I prefer the rate of fire on its contemporary. You know, in theory, this is the one that gets the big gun and the worse armor, but the 88 is a superior machine in pretty much every regard. So there we go. Can I finish this tiger? Oh, I'm spotted. So that was, yeah, that just, oh, I don't even see where that hit. That was like over a third of my hit points just gone. It's like you get spotted, that's it. There's nothing you can do. And I don't have the view range. In this particular match, I didn't have binos. I probably had a toolbox, because if you get tracked, that's obviously bad news with how slow this thing moves. But yeah, just blind firing now, and you would not believe at this point that this was going to be a win. But oh, that's incredibly lucky because it wasn't all. So they're just backing up because they know where I am. I know there's at least one Jagdpanther down there. Don't know where the rest are. This was yeah, the rest of the team was a bit derpy. There was a tiger. You see that tiger over there, full health? He just sits there basically. Doesn't matter that they're capping. It's actually the KV-1 that goes to interrupt the cap. The top tier tiger does nothing. There's also a T-29 camping in B9, so this was a very, very derpy match, and yeah, it was pretty lucky that we actually won it. So I'm just waiting now, because I know there's stuff down there. I'm just waiting for my inevitable doom, because doom is always inevitable in a Churchill Gun Carrier. There is nothing but doom. All is doom. You could tell I enjoyed playing this tank, right? There we go. So they've taken out some guys on the and there's that VK. So it means there is literally just an 87 in the cap. Tiger's still not moving, and I'm pretty frustrated at this point because, yep, there's nothing I could do. It was like a single same tier medium was enough to. It just. So 2/3 of the remaining enemy tanks are here on the 1-2 line. What is our team doing? Nothing. Bravo. The IS-2 is at last moving. I think I actually point out to them, yeah, but there's literally one tank in the cap. They only outnumber it 5-1, so maybe they could do something about that. Anyway, we'll pause that and actually stop that recording there, because they won in the end. It was pretty stupid, but at least it was a win. So even in a win, it was just so frustrating, and in that case I only did about 1k damage before I died. You can't spot for yourself. You are so reliant on your teammates, and given the nature of random battles, it's a real crapshoot. You know, it's worse than. You do better. In fact, I've literally just bought Stug. The tier 5 Stug is a better machine than this. Just almost any other tier 6 tank destroyer. A lot of the tier 5 tank destroyers are better than this. This is just, in its current setup, just bad. What would I do to improve it? I don't know. Is it really possible to salvage it in its current state? I think it would have to have some really outstanding stat, like the gun would have to be a lot better, or it would have to have really amazing view range. It would have to have like 400 meter view range, or it just needs more hit points regardless. But if the gun had like 0.32 accuracy and more alpha and lower aim time, then okay, the horrible gun traverse wouldn't matter as much, but it needs some considerable buffs before it becomes on a par with considering its competition is stuff like the Hellcat, the SU-100 and the 88. Even its own British counterpart it just blows it out of the water. So yeah, my recommendation for the time being is do not buy this. Even if you want to try the high tier Brit TDs, just go through the tank destroyer line. There's some pretty nice machines in there. The Electo was a lot of fun at tier 4. The 82 could be a lot of trolley fun. Yeah, the gun selection's a bit pants, but it's all about the armour. You're a tier 5 with 200mm armour, you can't complain too much. The 88, 87, 8015, they've all got pretty good armour, really fast firing. The Tortoise has a completely ridiculous Top Gun, and then you get to the tier 10, which is a freaking Death Star. So just play the tank destroyer line, don't bother with this thing. I don't honestly even know why it's a regular tank. Normally with a tank that has stats this weirdly bad, or kind of wonky, I can't think of the right word to use, but normally when you have stats that idiosyncratic, there we go, that's the word, it's a premium. I don't know why this wasn't a premium tank destroyer for the British. Yes, they've already got one at tier 7, but the Soviets have got a tier 6 and a tier 7 premium tank destroyer, so what? I don't know. I think it's hard to like this thing because it's not very good. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I picked this one to do as my first tank destroyer review. I want it out my garage, and I wanted to say publicly how bad it is, because it's the only satisfaction I can have out of this horrible machine, is just panning it publicly. That's how bad it is. I have to resort to Schadenfreude. Or is that even Schadenfreude? I don't think that is even Schadenfreude. I just have to resort to just completely saying it's completely awful, and I can't even sentence properly, it's so awful. Yeah, it's bad. Don't buy it, guys. Don't do it. You're worth more than that. Have a little self-respect. There's so much to live for, you guys. There's so much to live for. So, if you enjoyed this review, and the review was better than the tank itself, believe me, you can leave a comment, you can hit the like button, you can subscribe to my channel, you can check out my Facebook page, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.